Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Great Awakening Generator channel. I am Rose McNair, and I am coming to you from Auckland in New Zealand. So I hope that all of you are well, and thank you so much for joining us. I have a very interesting guest on my show today. And if I say show, it's probably because I do radio and, radio shows. So I do apologize if it sounds weird. I promise I'll get better at the terminology for doing a YouTube podcast or video. Anyway, so one thing I will have to say is I wish you well today. And I'm really hoping that you are managing to stay in balance and in your space and in your highest vibration, given that there's a lot of strong energies around. And so, yeah, I'm hoping that would be the thing going on for you, that you're managing to do that. All right, so I'm going to say hello to Felicity Lerouge. Hi, Felicity. How are you?
I'm great, Rose. It's really, really good to be on this vlog or video podcast with you.
Thank you so much for joining me. I was so fascinated with you the first time I heard about the things you do. And then of course you said some key words that really got me going, because you said Dr. Joe Dispenza, and I was like, oh, I love Dr. Joe's teachings, and I've done a lot of his meditations. And so, guided meditations online. I have not had the privilege yet to be in one of his workshops, but I understand if I can't be where he is, you're the next best thing for us here in New Zealand, because you are the first.
Thank you. And that's a hard act to live up to. But yeah, I am very fortunate to be one of his Neuro Change Solutions consultants. So personally trained and coached by Dr. Joe himself. So
right. And isn't that great? Now, before we go on, that's the tidbit we put out there. Before we carry on, I want to read something to our audience, because Felicity is according to her website, which is phenomenal-people.com. So that is the company that Felicity is the owner of, phenomenal-people.com. All right. So Felicity is the founder of this wonderful organization, and she is a leadership development consultant. I'm reading off her bio, by the way, and if you want to read more, you can go on and check it out at that website I just mentioned. So, company was founded in 2010. Phenomenal People have worked with corporate clients such as Society General, British Airways, and Guinness World Records, as well as startup businesses. Right, now, I'm just trying to scroll down a little bit, if you bear with me 1 second. Right, the part that got me on here is that Felicity is the first New Zealand consultant for Dr. Joe Dispenza's company, Neuro Change Solutions, and she is a certified heart math trainer. So yes, that is the introduction. Now, before we go to the questions regarding this amazing offering that we're talking about today, can you add anything more to that, Felicity? Tell me a little bit about you. Anything you think it will be great for us to know?
Well, I've had a very varied career path, really. I was long-haul cabin crew for many, many years with British Airways, based out of the UK. And during my free time when I was crew, I retrained in personal development. I was doing my PhD in coaching psychoneurology, which sounds very, very flashy, but it was really about getting a decent quality coaching qualification. And then I took voluntary redundancy from BA, launched my own business, found out that I actually like the dynamic of working in a training room with people. I love to coach, but I prefer the dynamic in a training room, because people get their own aha moments, and the synergy in the group creates, they create their own realizations and insights. So I started that career when I left British Airways in 2010. It was funny because we were talking about this off the air, we were talking, did all the should qualifications. So got my PhD in coaching psychoneurology. I did then the Chartered Institute qualification for learning and development, did a coaching thing, did this, that, and I was, had ticked all the boxes and was delivering training to clients, which was helpful and valuable, but could be like a suntan effect. You'd go in, it appeals to the intellect, it appeals to the conscious mind. And as we know, all this, because when I got involved in conflict a bit further down the line, conflict resolution management, conflict prevention, you could sit down with people and have a very civilized conversation about what's going to work, what isn't going to work, until you throw in the human factor with all the burbling emotions and the unconscious programs that are running and the beliefs that have been there since we were children and we're not even aware of a lot of the time. And I hope, and feedback that I got from clients, I got good results. And at the same time, I'd done personal development work with Tony Robbins, and he does a lot of, hypnotic effects, and was actually creating lasting change in people. And I was thinking, I'm missing the mark here for my clients. So I was very privileged when I was invited to apply to become a consultant for Dr. Joe, because his work is based on 25 years of neuroscience research. He's worked very closely with HeartMath Institute, who's another big research institution that have looked at neuroscience and neurocardiology, where it gets beyond the intellect, the philosophical learning, the analytical learning, the intellectual learning, and actually gets into the operating program, so that we can actually create change within the operating program, so that we can, get the results that we want in our lives and our businesses. Because, there's a big thing, people get jaded with programs and development and business development because they've been on all kinds of brilliant programs. But as I said, sometimes it can then, you go away and it's like the suntan effect. It fades within a few days because they're back in the same environment, which is triggering the same unconscious patterns, the same people reacting in the same way. And it takes an incredible amount of self-awareness and self-regulation to be able to sustain the change. And most of us don't have those tools and don't know how to do it. And in fact, most people will be able to tell you at length the number of times they've tried to change and failed. And even though they will have wanted to change and succeeded, they forget that, because we're hardwired to look at the more negative aspect of life, because that's our survival conditioning.
Yeah. So Felicity, thank you for that wonderful introduction to yourself. There was so much more you said that I couldn't say, because obviously we're the best ones to explain who we are. Now, what about HeartMath trainer? You are a certified HeartMath trainer. What does that mean?
So as I just mentioned a little bit, HeartMath Institute have been doing research for over 25 years on the science of the heart, cardioneurology, and also basically the heart is an incredibly intelligent organ, not just but beating sending the blood around our bodies, but it communicates with the brain. It sends lots of communication up the vagus nerve to the brain. 80% of the communication goes from the heart to the brain, although the brain does communicate with the heart. And it actually is able to regulate when we go into fight or flight. It's able to regulate the nervous system and calm it down if we're paying attention to it. So I think everybody, whether they would admit to it or not, because, even though things are changing positively, where people are more tuned in to their emotions and talking about from the heart, it's not so long ago where people would be really feel awkward and embarrassed about talking about, their heart, and their hearts told them this. That was always reserved for romantic movies, wasn't it? But HeartMath Institute have studied in very detailed scientific experiments with using a lot of technology that I can't remember off the top of my head, encephalograms, things like that, and measured the intelligent response of the heart. Actually looked at intuition, looked at we understand with mindfulness that when we slow down our breathing, which is something that everybody's been familiar with, isn't it, since the pandemic, slowing down our breathing, closing our eyes, becoming more still, becoming more conscious of where we are in the present moment. But when you add the intelligence of the heart to that, i.e. you activate a renewing emotion such as care, such as appreciation, such as gratitude, then that amps up mindfulness like 100-fold. That's my figures, but it basically really, really amps up the effects that you would get from mindfulness, because it's more intentional and it's more, it's not just about being present, it's being present with the attitude of gratitude, the attitude of appreciation, the attitude of trust and ease. So it's a very, very powerful body of research. And from that, HeartMath Institute have created a number of programs. And the one that I'm certified for is called the Resilience Advantage. And it helps people to stay in their, not only their peak in performance, but actually in a state of ease and flow when they're under very challenging conditions. So they work very closely with the military in the States particularly. They work with first responders, they work with the Red Cross, and they also work with high performers such as Olympic athletes, because it's, people like that need to be not only in their peak of their performance, but actually not in fear and reactivity, so that they can do the best job that is necessary in those circumstances and get the best results, not only for themselves, but for the people around them.
Wow. I'm quite fascinated with the idea that the heart sends messages to the brain. I just, it's becoming more and more evident that the body speaks so much, and parts of the body, like the body tells you so much. And you think about the heart and how, this is why we talk about things from the heart, and love and the heart are all associated. And there's so much that we don't know, or we say things because historically we've said things, but we don't know where the source of it all is. And we're in this time of discovering all of this. And I'm sure the HeartMath Institute have been around for a long time. But
over 20 years. Yeah. But it's funny, they don't do massive publicity and marketing. So that's why I think a lot of times people haven't heard of them. So, and interesting what you say about the heart and the intelligence. I just remembered another fact, that in embryo, when we're in our mother's womb, it's the heart that's the first organ that comes online. So it makes sense, doesn't it, really, that it's got to be a bit more intelligent than we might have given it credit for.
Absolutely. There's so many angles one can go with that statement you just made, right? When you think about how we function and how we perform, and who's in charge, who's the start of this creative thing, like an embryo. If the heart is the first thing, then who's in charge, really, right? Because we want the world.
Well, the thing is that we let the mind be in charge, because that's how we've been conditioned over the years. And we like to, don't get me wrong, the mind is brilliant, but it is quite reactive out of our past experiences. So, the analytical mind goes, this is good, bad, right, wrong, can I relate to this? This seems like something that happened in the past with this person, so I better protect myself about it happening again. So the mind can be very reactive, judgmental, categorizing, whereas the heart is very knowing. It can give you, and I know everybody listening, whether they might want to admit it or not, has had a moment where they've known something that's come not from their head, and they may have acted on that knowing, or they may have ignored it. But either way, somewhere down the line, the knowing will have turned out to be completely 100% right direction. And if they did ignore it, they knew that they ignored it, and they'd go, oh, if only I'd listened to my whatever it was. They may not have called it their heart, but we've all had that experience.
We've all had that experience. We've gone down that road so many times. I have had it more than many times.
Yes.
So coming back to the tidbit that we put out there, consultants to Dr. Joe Dispenza here in New Zealand. How does this come about? You told us that you were approached to apply.
I'm just going to cough. I'm so sorry. Yeah, so during my my first kind of foray into personal development with Tony Robbins, I met a wonderful lady I had the opportunity to work with at events a couple of times called Lindsay Hurst, and she then got involved in Dr. Joe's work and is now actually his chief operations officer. And I'd seen her at a couple of his events over the years when I was still in London, and I was really interested in becoming one of Joe's consultants. So, and how Neurochange Solutions, which is his business consulting branch, came about was people were going to his meditation retreats and saying, this works amazing. I have to take it into my business. What have you got so that I can take it into my business? And he said, well, I haven't got anything really. So that's how it was developed. And I'd been interested for a while when I'd started my own business, as I say, and I just wasn't quite ready for it. And then in 2019, I got an email from the company to say Lindsay had asked that I would apply. And that didn't mean I got in. But at that time, they had 350 odd applications, and they took 35 of us in that intake, which was, that was great. And there we arrived thinking, oh yes, we know Joe's work and this is going to be amazing, we're going to take it out into the business world that really needs it. And then of course when we're being drilled about knowing it, this is the whole thing that I always refer to about knowing something intellectually, but have you been initiated into it? Are you actually embodying it and using this head knowledge? Is it become who you are? So I discovered that I knew it on one level, but certainly not on the level I needed to. And that wasn't just me, that was most of the group that were there. And then we had the pleasure and the privilege and the terror of Joe arriving for the last 2 days of the program and basically drilling us and coaching us and getting us to repeat his work to him, and not to scare us or anything, but he wanted us to know it viscerally. So this isn't the kind of work that you can go and just read from a book and regurgitate. You have to embody it, because you're saying to people, this is about creating lasting change. And unless you're able to demonstrate it in your own life, you shouldn't be standing up in front of people and talking about it. This is not just head knowledge and intellectualizing. This is actually embodying it so that you can really recognize when people are catching the concepts and when they're not. And this is also why the program with Joe has a 30-day follow-up Genius Journal. So I check in with participants and see how they're going, because, it's very easy to revert to your old behaviors and habits, but we really want to encourage people to continue to activate this learning. So, you're changing, you're refiring and rewiring neural pathways in your brain. You're literally changing your mind. So it's very, very powerful. Same as anything though, you have to continue to utilize it. If you don't use it, you lose it.
That's right. And I guess for me, I've been fascinated with the work of Dr. Joe Dispenza for years now. Mm-hmm. And I had hoped so much to be at the retreat. I probably said this before, and at one of his retreats. And I came back in 2020, in March 2020, before the borders closed, from a conference, Abraham Hicks conference. And my next the plan I had was the next conference I was going to be at was going to be Dr. Joe's. And I was looking at what was happening later on in the year, only to find that everything had changed. And of course, all our plans changed. And I thought through that time, oh, I guess it looks like no Dr. Joe Dispenza retreat for me, And so it was kind of, weird to think, oh, look, there was this dream, and I don't know when it's actually going to happen or if I'm ever going to get to it. And now we have you here, and we have Dr. Joe still doing his retreats.
Yes, absolutely. He's on full throttle now. I mean, I barely has time to breathe. He's just doing the events all over the world, which is wonderful. And yes, he is in Australia in a couple of weeks, but he'll be back. He'll be back now.
And as we're talking about things happening in their right time before we went to the recording, to start recording this, it's true. If you have a wish and a hope for something, sometimes the timing is slightly off. Sometimes it's just, you'll get there when you're absolutely ready for it and everything aligns. And I mean, that's not to say you're not having dreams or you're not working at making your dreams come true. It's just that it's about the feeling within you, right? Does it feel right for here and now? Do you do it with your bliss?
Absolutely. Yeah, I agree. And it's taken me a while, and sometimes I still have the resistance to it, because there's the good old ego that will kick up a fuss, that I believe that life happens for me, not to me, and whatever comes along has got a gift in it for me if I'm receptive enough to be able to recognize it and flow with it rather than trying to resist it. I've had, we've all, I'm sure the same, had a number of lessons in our lives where if we'd have just actually surrendered earlier, then it would have been much less painful, and the learning would have come about a lot quicker. But hang on a minute, sorry, I've got my neighbours shouting. Sorry, they're calling me. I'll have to go. Hello, sorry, I was just right there, just on the...
Well, welcome back, everyone, and sorry about that, but this is a channel where life is happening, and that can happen. So this is it. So thank you very much for your patience, but welcome to our world, the reality of it.
Yes, I'm very, very grateful that my little downstairs neighbour, 11-year-old Anne, wanted to bring me some of her birthday cakes, and she was shouting up the stairs, so I couldn't ignore her.
No, definitely not. Of course not. It's her birthday and she brought you cake.
Yes.
How lucky is that? And it's her special day.
Yes.
So we were talking about Dr. Joe's Dispenza, and I kind of lost my train of thought, as well, you might have too. And now that you're cake on the
you're asking me how it came about, and I talked about going to Cancun and having the training with him and the coaching with him, and that he, really encouraged us. I think that's where the point we'd got to, that he drilled us, not because he was trying to bully us or intimidate us, but he needed us to be at a level so that we're demonstrating the work. We're not just knowing it intellectually, but we're demonstrating it, we're living it. I think that's what we got to, wasn't it? Because we were saying so much learning is really designed for the intellect, and the intellect is a part of it, but it's not the whole part, and we need to get deeper than that.
Yeah, I'm just finding we're needing to look at life a bit more, not a bit more, but from a holistic perspective. And there is nothing wrong with holistic perspective. There's nothing wrong with operating from the heart platform or from the mind platform, but they both have equal value. It's a matter of whose opinion it is and what's been projected historically to us, and now we're moving more.
Well, I think it's more, for me, I would say it's more about, it doesn't have to be either or. Before, if people were heart-centered, there was a little bit of, we don't want to be involved in that intellectual stuff. I feel everything. I'm very, and now it's like, respect both. They're both beautiful gifts, and both have messages and tools for us. So embodying them and embracing both sides is where the value is, I think.
Yeah, I agree. And I think my feeling about it is, humanity is on the journey to itself. This is my thought pattern. And I believe when we came into this lifetime and in this time and space, we did choose the amnesia, and we did, like Dolores Cannon talks about that. We chose to come here, and we put up our hands to be here. And I remember listening to one of her podcasts where she talked about, some of you might be thinking, or I think in that time and space when we put up our hands to come here, we thought, oh my God, what have I done? But we committed to it, and we were going to come because
I think many times, don't we? Particularly if we have a level of awareness or consciousness, or the kind of the stirrings of there's more to life than the whole 2.4 kids, good job, nice house, bits of, nice stuff on the side, New Zealand particularly, a batch in a boat, a few nice holidays. And if you don't walk to the rhythm of the same drum as the most of society, sometimes you can. And particularly for me, when I feel like I'm just about to have another shift in awareness, I'll start to think, okay, why did I sign up for this? This is a strange world, and I don't really feel like I fit in. So what am I doing here? But as you say, we put our hands up for this assignment.
Yeah. Look, I've never really felt like I fit in here, or I fit in anything, really. My whole life has been about not fitting into where I was, or, and all aspects, even in a classroom, even in the corporate world, I just didn't fit into it. I think that's one of the signs that we have come here for other purposes than to just live the third dimensional life. And you're right about the shifts. And right now, this time and space, we're having shifts like very often. It's not like you have a shift now and then you don't have one for another 2 years. The shifts are coming. They're coming like really fast. And when you're having a shift, like I know for me, because I do light language, when I do my language, I sound different from the last time I did the language. I might sound like, Tereo, for example. I might be speaking Tereo, yet I don't know Tereo. But I love that we are advancing like we are. And it's taken me a long time, probably the last 2 years, to embrace the position, because you suddenly started to realize what this was all about. I mean, I've known for a long time why I'm here, but the third dimensional situations, the living situations, the circumstances of life as, the traditional life as we know it, got very uncomfortable. It got to a stage where it was like you couldn't find answers to things that you would ordinarily find, I'm self-employed, and the calls for work stopped coming. And then you know what that means. And then you think, but even when I try to do the work I have got, it doesn't feel quite like I'm supposed to be doing that, or I get bored or whatever. And so this is all movements towards we are transforming, all of the signs that we are transforming, and we are being shifted to that purpose, whatever that purpose is. It's always higher because it comes from the universe, God, the universe, I believe. It comes from the higher you. And so, or the higher self that is within you. And so, it's just about, I'm saying to a lot of people to accept where you are right now. Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah. And accept that the disturbance is part of the new norm, really. It's interesting that you said about the shifts happening so quickly, Rose. I was talking to a friend of mine a couple of days ago, and we were both saying that, 10 years ago, maybe, certainly within the, 20, 30 years ago, you could have 2 or 3 big shifts in a lifetime. And then the rest of it was bumbling along, living a 3D life. And it was all very lovely. But now, because of the vibration on the planet has increased so much, and, there's so many things being shaken to the surface, everything that's going on in the world, natural disasters, and then the pandemic, etc. It's bringing everything, shaking it up to a different level of existence, isn't it? And I think that's why we can feel a bit discombobulated, and why it's so important to create our own sense of certainty and grounding, and and this is why I really, really value the fact that I've found Jo's work and the Heart Math work, because I want to bring value to my clients, and we spend so much of our time at work that if we're not the millennials were the first ones to say, I want to do work that's purposeful. And they actually gave a voice to everybody, because, just because you were Generation X, or, the baby boomers, it wasn't that you didn't want to do purposeful work, but you just almost didn't give yourself permission to even think that way. It was, generations were much more conforming, and the millennials gave us that gift of saying, no, I'm spending all my time doing this, it's got to be something purposeful. And now we've moved on from even that, and saying, okay, it's got to be purposeful, but not just for me. It's like, how can we serve the community? How can we look after our planet that we have really abused? And Jo's work brings the tools that the mystics, the mystical masters, and the spiritual teachers have always known about. But what I love about it is he brings it into such a scientific formula that's all backed with science. He shows you all the data, he shows you about brain waves, etc. So instead of being able to just go, oh, well, that's just for the woo-woo people, now Jo's work is scientifically backed. And some of the clients that he's worked with, and this program has been taken into, the results that they're getting in much greater collaboration, and people go, oh, well, that's nice, but what's the bottom line? Well, this greater collaboration, this greater sense of purpose and commitment has meant that businesses' revenue has gone up, and also it's made them rethink about, how am I serving my customers? Is this something that's really valuable for them? So it's really, I feel very privileged to be able to share work that is so impactful in a positive way, and really supports people to be the best version of themselves, that the person they like, the leader that they need to be in these new emerging paradigms, where now everything we've known has been thrown up business-wise, isn't it? You might have been a leader for 10, 20, 30 years, and now technology's come in. So you're having to have the humility to be reverse mentored by young kids who know technology by the back of their hand, and you don't know it. But they might have some great ideas and are brilliant at the collaboration, but aren't so good at having the difficult conversations and putting boundaries in place and things. So it's really a really interesting time, a real melting pot. And if we collaborate and look at each other's strengths and gifts and perspectives, we can create something not just in business, but in all our lives, that's really special, that's really worthwhile, that is more than might makes right, and the person who's the fastest or the wins. It's about a win-win for everybody, and not from a communist perspective where we strip away the wealth from everybody and then divide it up equally. It's about playing to people's different gifts, because not everybody wants to be super successful CEO of a Fortune 500 business that's generating billions. Some people just want to do a really good job where they are. And of course, we all want to have our needs met. But this is a time where we can really harness those, those impulses if we do it right. There are all the opportunities. There's all the technology out there. There's all the resources for us to be able to bring this together and do it. But we've just got to trust that we can do it, and stop living out of old models of, a few people with all the wealth and the power, and the rest of us just falling into line, and doing what we're told, because that's not win-win.
So a few things I want to say to what you were saying now is firstly, I was speaking to a friend earlier, and we talked about this where a lot of stuff's going on in the world and it's crazy at the moment. But we signed up to come here and be here at this point. And what we need to do is start thinking about our response to the things that are happening, the shocking things that we're hearing, and start to work on how am I going to respond to that? Am I going to share it with everybody? And sometimes there are things you have to share. You have to share the knowledge with everyone. Or am I going to, and so what perspective do I have when I share it? Is it to create fear? Is it to create awareness? And is it important that I be the messenger of that? Mm-hmm. And I think coming back to the point of what is it that we are trying to achieve in this time? Is this, we're all shifting now. It's talking about shifting, and we're shifting to the point of, okay, so I know that's happening. I'm not going to get caught up in that. I'm just going to move forward and fulfill the purpose that I have come to fulfill here on the planet. So that's the one thing. The other thing I really like is, and I've said this a few times about Dr. Joe's work, and I've said he in his research and the processes and the modalities that he has been using to awaken us to our true selves and help us to become deprogram ourselves from that thought pattern. He's actually managed to what's the word is to clear the divide between science and the esoteric, and to say that actually it's not one or the other, it's actually linked, they're connected, and there is nothing wrong with the esoteric. It's nothing wrong with science. And because throughout the ages, it's always been that they have to be on the opposite sides of the spectrum. It's one or the other. And whatever he's formulated has managed to create this or remove the divide between the two. And of course, it adds so much more on different levels, and with working with the meditation that suddenly aligns the energy centers, or you've got that Kundalini breathing that he talks about, and meditations using Kundalini technique. So I feel like this is important. The work that you and everybody that related to the teachings of Dr. Joe Dispenza are doing is really important at the moment. We have come for a time, or we are in a time, that there is so much of fun, loving ways to get creative, to get in touch with the true self that we are, the greatest us that we are, and imagine what we could all be and how the planet could be. And that is, if that is the intention of any human being, that is what we're working towards, this planet. Not working so much, but I don't even know what word to use to say we're going towards that, we're achieving that, we're
evolving, isn't it? Evolution. The universe is constantly, we've said from the Big Bang, is constantly unfolding and evolving, and our nature is to do the same. We're not living, and you can see we're not living like we did even 50 years ago. Perceptions are different, opportunities are different, our lifestyles are different. The whole thing, and even since the pandemic, isn't it? The whole blended working, which was never, oh no, you can't work from home, we can't trust you. And then of course you had to give people the autonomy and trust them to get their work done. And they've recognized now they've got much happier employees, much more engaged. And in most cases, of course, I know there's always the opposite to the norm, but also that's given people the desire to have more autonomy over their lives again.
Yeah. It's forcing people to think about what they want, how they want to live their life. And I believe that nothing is by chance. All of this has been purposed to awaken humanity and awaken us to the true selves that we are, and to say, well, come on now, you create from the creative being that you are, because you have got so much creativity within you.
Absolutely.
And such a good liberating feeling to be doing the work you love, and
Absolutely.
do it on your terms, because doing it on your terms doesn't make you a non-conformist. It just helps you be the you that you are. Because I think when you let people be themselves, you get
Yeah.
so much more out of them.
Well, do you know what? I don't, even the phrase nonconformist has got a bit of a charge around it, hasn't it? I would just say just let people be individuals, because at the end of the day, we are all unique expressions of life. And unfortunately, right, really, since the industrial age, we have been conditioned. If you weren't the lord of the manor, or, you were being brought up to work in the factories and things, be conditioned to live a certain life with a certain mindset, not to think for yourself. And that carried on for generations and generations and generations, up until, as we talked about the millennials. And all of a sudden there's this generation of people whose parents told them that they could be anything that they wanted to be, and they've believed them and gone, well, if I can be anything I want to be, well, I want to do purposeful work, and it's, we still have a lot of the old systems from the industrial age, the 8.5 hour work day, comes from there. And despite the fact there's been studies out for years and years and years that say if you do an 8.5 hour day, you're only productive for about 3 of those hours, and the rest of the time you're dragging yourself through the day. Whereas if you do a 6 hour day and you've got a break in the middle, you're actually productive for the whole time. But we love to stick to what we know, don't we? We're like, oh, we don't really want to change things because we're familiar. This is the familiar. And we're scared of the unknown. And the thing is, we think we can control our environments, but the pandemic showed us, and it's always been the case, we can't control everything. We can put things in place, but unless we're flexible and adaptable and agile, we're not going to be able to move with this evolution. And we all know what happened to the dinosaurs. I know that wasn't their fault. They couldn't adapt, but we can adapt. We can adapt and change. And it's for us to take the tools that are there for us now to support us in doing that. Because if we don't change with the way the world is changing, we're gonna find it a very uncomfortable and not a pleasant place to be as we move forward.
I agree. And also, change is happening. It's inevitable. We need to embrace that it's happening and go with the flow of it. And trust, I would say to anybody listening, trust yourself. Go within. Apply those things of being mindful, do the meditation, do those, that's the work we have to do, which is not hard really. 10 minutes of meditation in a day will start to set you up. Start to practice those things. Live clean lives. When I say live clean lives, I had somebody on radio talking to me about living a clean life. And he's 87, and he said he didn't drink too much. He ate organic food all his life, and he did the exercises, and he went out and he did fitness, and he went out to nature every single day. And he went out and walked, but on the beach, he walked in the garden, he went for the school holidays, they would go camping, and he would just be at one with Mother Nature. And these are the things that really help us to appreciate, to come back to center, to come back to finding out what's really going on within our mind, within our heart. And so I would say, if we're trying, even I say this to myself because sometimes I'm trying to hold on to things that are no longer serving me, so to speak of. It's part of the journey to start awakening to and evolving to what it is that is going to be the way forward. And it's a good one. It doesn't always feel like a good one, but it's a good one.
Yeah, totally. Well, it's I like the analogy of when a seed is planted and its roots are just about to come forth, it looks like chaos, doesn't it? The beautiful little shell that's so, unflawed then cracks open, and the roots go down and then the shoots appear. But if it didn't break down, something as beautiful as the plant wouldn't emerge. But when you're in the middle of that, being that seed, and things, obviously doesn't have human consciousness, but if it did, can you imagine it would be going, oh my goodness, what's going on here? This is all, I know what this is all safe, this is all the known, and now something else is appearing. And as you said, it can be uncomfortable initially, but I think it's just trusting that the unfold, as we unfold, then the ego does kick up a fuss because it doesn't like the unknown, but it will be better than we can imagine if we allow the process to take place. And we can watch. It doesn't mean that we negate our emotions or stuff them or anything. We can be present with those emotions, but recognize what they are. They're a precursor to that growth and that emergence, so that we don't struggle with the process and allow it to take place more smoothly and quickly, because we're not interfering with it. But that does take a few rounds, doesn't it, Rose?
It does.
A few rounds of that happening before you recognize what's going on and go, aha, this is a shift, this is emergence to the next level. Okay, I'm just going to relax into it as much as I can, rather than screaming and running around in circles like a headless chicken.
Yeah, and I think it's easy to maintain or to adapt and adopt the victim mentality. And I say that because I'm guilty. When it's happening, I always think, oh my gosh, it's happening to me. Why is this happening to me? Why can't I get a break? Stuff like that. But like you were saying earlier, it's not happening to you. It's happening for you. And a friend of mine always says that, the universe is rigged for your benefit. And sometimes I get quite annoyed with him and say, are you sure about that? If something's are you sure about that? Because I don't feel like it. I feel, and he always says, but you know what? It's always rigged for your benefit. No matter what's happening, it's rigged for your benefit. And I know that's in the greater perspective, how do you say that to somebody who doesn't know where the next meal is coming from or whatever? But again, the only thing one can do in your life, in my life, in everyone's life, is we can only control those things that we can control. Yes, all of that other stuff is happening, but it's also part of this evolution we're going through, that we are moving towards something greater, the greater us. That's what we're moving towards. So yes, it's part of the journey. And I find often one day I'm feeling so high, and the next day I'm like, oh blah, why did that happen? It's very easy to go back into it. Constantly having to work on that, isn't it?
Oh yes, and that we talked about this before we came on air. One of the models in Joe's program, one of the things he talks about is, in order, our personality creates our personal reality, and our personality is made up of how we think, how we act, and how we feel. And most people want to change as the same personality, and it doesn't work. In order for us to change our lives, our personal reality, we have to change, and it's understanding that. So we have to change the way we think. We have to change the way we act, and we have to be aware that we can activate our feelings. You can. And even if you think, okay, I'm feeling really down today and I don't feel like it, what's going to make me laugh? I'll go and put on a really silly comedy or some skit, I had something that unfailingly made me snigger like a school child. That I found this clip on YouTube of the farting hippo, and it didn't matter what my nose, it would just make me just back up. And the responses of everybody at the zoo were around this little, I don't know, 6-year-old boy's face as he looked at the camera and his mum was filming, going, so we think we can't control our emotions, but we can refocus. So that's just a silly example, but we can dance. What are our joy triggers? What makes us joyful? Like you said about the gentleman, you can go and walk on the beach and be in nature. I remember many years ago, and I was going through my divorce, and I was living in the French Alps at the time, and I was, I had very sad days. And thankfully, my neighbours' dogs used to see me get home from work and come running out with their leads in their mouths, because both their owners had small kids and they weren't getting the walk. So I would take the dogs up the mountain, and it was always really grounding for me to be climbing up the lower parts of the mountain. Obviously, I'm not a hiker, not a major hiker, but it just put life in perspective and thought, I'm a blip. This life, as much as I want to appreciate it, I'm a blip. And to be in nature like that and see the majesty and understand those mountains have been around for thousands and thousands of years. That's not to say, come on, Felicity, pull yourself together, stop whinging. It was about recognizing the bigger picture. And now that I'm further along my, I would say, my spiritual journey, it's recognizing that I am an expression of divine life, whatever you want to call it. And I am greater by far than my limited circumstances, whatever that might be. And I'm very grateful that, I've never been in a situation where I have gone days and days without food or anything like that. And as you say, Rose, it's, you're not saying, it's much harder to think that life is happening for you in a true survival situation. But when we can tune in to our higher nature, our more unlimited nature, then it makes it a lot easier to navigate the human 3D challenges, I think.
Yeah, I think so. I've got CJ trying to talk to me through the window. CJ.
Okay. We've had it all this evening, haven't we?
I love it because it's happening. So he's, as I was telling about CJ earlier, he loves it when I feed him the last bit of his food with my fingers. He doesn't want to eat the last bit of his food. But it's time. It's not even time for him to have the next meal, because he has a meal like six meals a day, but small ones, So anyway, he's hearing that I'm in here and I'm talking to you. He can hear us and he's like, oh, can I come in? He doesn't come in because...
Can I be involved?
Yeah, can I be involved? Why are you speaking to somebody else and not me? But all right. So Felicity, I'm going to ask you to tell us about what your workshops are about here. I mean, you're the consultant for Dr. Joe Dispenza here in New Zealand. And if you told us everything that you've told us now, and you're happy to go along and on with telling us about what it is that you're offering, sure, and how, and where people can get in touch with you for that. That would be really good.
Sure, absolutely. So the program is a 12-hour program, and at the moment I'm running it over 2 consecutive days, once a month on a Saturday. So the next one is going to be in April. There are dates on the website for March that I need to take down because I'm not able to allocate those days. But the dates for April and May are there in the calendar. So we usually run from 10 till 5-ish, depending on the size of the group. Just did one, finished on the 18th of January, got some great feedback from them already. They're really finding they're a week into their Genius Journal, so they're really having a great ongoing experience, which is wonderful. So the workshop in the 12 hours is all about supporting you. It's called Change Your Mind, Create New Results, and it's supporting you to raise your awareness of your ability and your where you have changed in the past, how you've done it, so that you can apply it to change in the future. So it's brilliant for that self-awareness and self-regulation. So you're not looking for anything external to make your life work. It's all down to you tapping into those brilliant inner resources that you may have forgotten about or may not even know that you've got. So in the program, there are 2 models that we run through, and I've touched on the first one briefly about thinking, acting and feeling. when we change how we think, act, and feel, we can change our personal reality, our personal lives. And then we have 4 tools that help you reinforce what you're learning in the program. After the program, you have your 30-day to Genius journal where you'll be doing, so the end of the program closes with a meditation experience, because that's what gets us to go into the operating system, into the unconscious mind, and helps us to be able to refire and rewire those neural pathways in a lasting way, so that they're not just, a couple of hours of new learning that then prunes apart when we don't go back to it. So the journal is really supportive in that. And then, there's anyone that I know that likes Dr. Joe's work is always keen to be part of a little community. There are a number of Facebook groups. We've got our New Zealand Dr. Joe group. So yeah, it's good to be around like-minded people and so many people, as you say, appreciate Joe's work because as he says, it demystifies the mystical. It brings it in scientific terms. It brings the scientific data and evidence of why it works and what you can expect. And, it also shows you when it's not working, it's because you're not working it. And the program makes that very clear, not to put any blame or anything at all, but it's that understanding. And it's very empowering to know that you have the power. You have all you need in your own hands, and it's about accessing it, understanding that, and then keep applying the practices and the tools so that you do actually rewire your brain, change your mind so that you can create new results.
Very important for anybody to doing this to realize the seriousness of it. And I mean, as soon as we say serious, it might sound unfun, but if you really,
you just look at anybody, sports, successful sports people, successful musicians, successful actors and actresses, comedians. People go, oh, well, I'm, it's 1 in a million that could end up in Hollywood or whatever. But it shows that it's just basically they have applied a formula and applied it and applied it and applied it and practiced and practiced and practiced on the days where they didn't feel like it. Yes. They've practiced and practiced and practiced. And it's about understanding for us how to use the tools to overcome the resistance, because it's that resistance that makes us want to stay the same.
Yes.
And we talk about that in the program as well, our survival instincts versus the power to create. So we look at that in great detail.
Yeah, it's saying if I want to make some serious change in my life, then I have to do something diligently. Yes, yeah, that's basically right, to make that change. In the old days when we were in church, I remember them saying, the circumcision of the heart. It's like the circumcision of the heart when the higher self, the God spirit within you, converts that thinking pattern or that, and that's what makes it so serious. I seriously want this change. I definitely want to do this. And so I'm going to give myself the chance to do that. And part of that chance is, part of giving yourself that chance is to, it's about self-love, isn't it? It's saying, you know what I've been doing all this time. I get results sometimes. I don't get any other times despite my efforts. I feel like I'm wandering around the planet, going nowhere, doing whatever, stop, start, taking 10 steps forward, then another 25 back, that kind of thing. And if obviously if you want to make that change, then yes, this is where the rubber meets the road, so to speak, of where you think, well, I've got to do something serious and I need help to do it, because sometimes with all the programming we've gone through, not sometimes, most of the time, we've been programmed to do and be certain things from the time we were children, and we were being programmed to, and it's got to be, that is the way to do it, and that's the only way, and there's no other way around that. And those things don't always work for everyone. It works for lots of people most of the time, but not all of the time. Anyway, Yeah.
And the program will show you why it's worked, and when it hasn't worked, why it hasn't worked, so that you can repeat the formula for change. You can, and it will work for everyone if you work it. Yeah.
Yes, very important. So, Felicity, tell us where we can contact you again, please. I mentioned it.
My website has there's an events tab, so it has the details of the events that are coming up, and my website is www.phenomenal-people.com. Maybe we can put it in the end slides.
I was going to say that I'll put the link to the website here, and
we said this last time. It's not a website name for a radio or audio, is it? Because it's not spelled like it sounds.
Yeah, it's got the hyphen.
Yeah.
Phenomenal-people.com. And phenomenal hyphen, if anyone's wondering about what is hyphen, it's the dash in punctuation. Yeah.
That's what I mean. It's not the best choice of website, but hey, it is what it is.
It's different, and it's a point of conversation. And now, do you think if we say, if somebody heard this, they'll probably remember it because we talked about it?
Let's hope so.
Yeah, no, that's great. I think it'll be fine. So is there anything you want to leave us with? We're coming to the end of our topic today, or our chat today. Is there any words of wisdom that you want to say to any of us?
The only thing I would say is, I've talked a little bit about one of the formulas about changing how you think, act, and feel to change your life. And I've seen it happen with people, and it's phenomenal. And I'm so grateful for the work that I do. It's such a privilege to be able to facilitate the change that people want to create in their lives. And basically what I do, what I've always tried to do, but it's so much easier with brilliant programs like Heart Math's program and Dr. Joe's program. I hold up the mirror to people so that they can see their own brilliance and recognize that. And when we do that, when we're able to do that, then we're less likely to be looking externally for satisfaction and validation, because it's when we come back into our core and we remember who we are that we can create that life from our unique perspective with our unique skills and talents and desires. So yeah. Enjoy.
I want to say, don't you want to get to know you? Don't you want to know the you that if there was no imprint in you when you were born, and you could only do what you wanted to do, what your brain functioned with it or told you how to be? Don't you want to know who that person is, how that brain would have worked for you? And I think that's the important thing, is to getting back to self in the sense, and working and living from your place of self and empowerment. So you were mentioning something about the give, is it a give a little, give something with Dr. Joe?
Joe is associated with a charity called Give to Give, and they support people that couldn't afford to go to his events or couldn't afford the Change Your Mind program. They sponsor. And a friend of mine who's also a consultant, Faith Holmes, she's just been working with the Lakota Indian tribe in America, in one of the poorest, most impoverished, most historically trodden down cultures and communities within the United States. And Give to Give has just sponsored 99 of the community, the American Indian community and the reservation, to go through the program. And it's just been extraordinary to be on a webinar with them today, to see the self-belief that it's activated in two of the ladies there that work with the youth, work with the community there, that are both in education. And they both said it's enabled us to get back in touch with who we are, because of course their culture was so suppressed, and even their language, not only their traditions, but even their languages were banned. They weren't allowed to speak their their native tongue or practice any of their traditional practices. And that, how repressive is that? And they've lived under that cloud for so many generations, but this work has helped them really start to get back in touch with, as you say, Rose, their true selves. And it's like it's a real emergence.
That's
yeah. So Joe's work, and it's working. I mean, there's going into prisons in Mexico as well at the moment, women's prisons, which is incredible. So yeah, it's, if you're in business, it's great. You spend so much time at work, and we want to make that a really purposeful, fun, but not only just purposeful, but engaging, enjoyable, fun, valuable use of our time and skills. But it's also been taken into places where people are really, really need it, in the prisons and on the reservations. So,
wow, that's really amazing what you just said. I just think, wow, how incredible is that? And it's getting to, for want of a better word, the grassroots of humanity, where people can, find hope and see that they are more than what they see. That is a paradigm shift in the brain, isn't it? And the teachings that Dr. Joe has done, well, I know that it's phenomenal, and it's the right place that it's all going to, especially when people are in that situation, and to lift up that community into a space where self-belief and empowering them to know, to think a certain way. Wow, it's going to be incredible, isn't it? It's going to be
absolutely. Really... absolutely. Yeah.
Well, so Felicity, thank you so much for chatting with me today.
It's welcome. It's been a fun and slightly bonkers with animals and neighbours wandering in and out, but hopefully everybody's managed to get over that.
It's one of those things that happens when you work from home.
It's real, isn't it? It's real. So
that's it. Yeah. But I mean, we love it, and we have a very understanding audience. My thought pattern, and I always say this even about radio. If I make a mistake on radio, I have a very forgiving audience, and I guess maybe this is it. This is the way New Zealanders are. We just go with the flow, and we just like, okay, so that happened. Well, so that's life. It's happening alongside. It doesn't mean we have to stop here, or we have to be picture perfect and all of that. So thank you so much, and I do apologize for my interruptions as well, but thank you. And it's nice because we brought our people into it. I love it because we're living, right? So for everyone out there, I want to say thank you so much for joining us today, and I will put this up very soon on the online platform. It will be on YouTube, and also, you know where to get in touch with Felicity. I will put her link as well when I publish the video, and do get in touch with her. And at the moment, Felicity, you're doing your workshops face to face.
Yes,
that's right. So if you're in New Zealand, that would be great. Could somebody do it online with you if somebody wanted to do it?
Yeah, if people probably wouldn't do it just for one person, but if you've got a business and you'd like me to do it for your team, then absolutely we can do it online.
Yeah, and you don't have to be in the same country to do that. You can be anywhere in the country or anywhere in the world, and you will be able to do that. So yes, everyone, if you're thinking you want to do this, because I when you were talking about the management, companies bringing it into their their management team, where individuals are going through this transformation process or going through this course and having a change. It's becoming very evident that we're not focused on one thing. We're not focused on, well, if it's a manager within a company that's just helping him be a better manager or a better leader. It's helping individuals in a holistic way to look to self and to be the best they can be in all aspects of their life. Yeah. And your offering is to companies, but it's also to individuals. And so I will say to our audience to be the best that you want to be and to give yourself some love. This is a good thing to do. This workshop is a good thing to do. I believe it. If you haven't heard of Dr. Joe Dispenza before, go and check him out online. He's everywhere. All right.
Absolutely.
And when you do, you try doing one of his meditations and see how your life shifts. And then wow, what have I hit here? So really, really wonderful, wonderful teaching. Yeah. You wanted to say something? You carry on.
No, I was just agreeing with you. It is pretty phenomenal. And it's interesting because more and more people are coming across him and being curious. And we had the meditation group here at my home this weekend on Sunday, and had a new couple come along, and he'd meditated for quite some time, and she was very new to it all. And the meditations, the ones that we do, because it's a group, we do the meditation's about an hour long, and I was like, oh, how's she going to be? And she just dropped in, not like, oh, but I didn't want someone to be sitting there for an hour when everyone else is in deep meditation and she's thinking, what am I doing here? But she just dropped into it, and she came out of it and said she felt like it had been about 10 minutes, and her face was just lit up. But just to kind of be clear, that the meditation in the workshop is not an hour. Don't panic, it's less than 20 minutes. So because we want to break you in gently, but as Rose was saying, it's a extraordinary experience because it really enables you to get in touch with your expanded self, let's just call it that, and tap into or as Joe always calls it, which is correct, as the quantum field, the realm of all possibilities. So
wonderful. Felicity, thank you for bringing Dr. Joe Dispenza so close to home.
Oh, bless you. My privilege and my honor. I'm grateful.
This is the manifestation of many of us here in New Zealand. I've got to tell you that. I know I speak for myself, but I know other people that do listen to Dr. Joe Dispenza, and they do his meditations. And so, thank you so much for that. Thank you for feeling that you needed to, in making the change that you did, you brought this to us. And I appreciate that so much. So thank you. And to everyone, time for us to love and leave you, but, keep reaching for the stars. And thank you all for joining us. All right. Catch you next time on the Great Awakening Generator. Bye, everyone. Bye.
Bye.